There was a time when family meant the people you were born to, the blood that ran through your veins. But what happened on Family Feud in September 2024 would redefine what family truly means. When contestant Jennifer Torres stood at that podium and Steve Harvey asked her a simple question about her childhood, nobody expected her answer would stop the entire game. Nobody expected that one woman's heartbreaking truth would expose a painful reality that thousands of children face every single day. And nobody expected that Steve Harvey, a man known for his quick wit and infectious laugh, would break down in tears and make a promise that would change everything. Because sometimes the families we choose are more powerful than the families we're born into. And sometimes, the courage to share your pain is the first step toward healing. Jennifer Torres was 32 years old, a pediatric nurse from Seattle, Washington, with a smile that could light up a room and eyes that carried stories she rarely shared. To anyone who met her, she seemed to have it all together: a good career, a beautiful home, close friends who loved her like family. But what most people didn't know was that Jennifer's path to this life had been paved with more heartbreak and rejection than most people experience in a lifetime. Jennifer had entered the foster care system when she was 6 years old. Her mother had struggled with addiction, cycling in and out of rehabilitation programs, never quite able to stay sober long enough to regain custody. Her father was unknown, just a name on a birth certificate that led nowhere. For the next 12 years, Jennifer would live in 17 different foster homes, 17 homes in 12 years. Some placements lasted only a few weeks. The longest lasted 14 months, and Jennifer had dared to hope that maybe, finally, she had found her forever family. She had started calling them Mom and Dad. She had unpacked all her belongings instead of keeping them in garbage bags, ready for the next move. She had let herself believe that she was wanted. But then the family had gotten pregnant with their biological child, and suddenly there wasn't room for Jennifer anymore. She was sent back into the system with a heart that had been broken one too many times. After that, she stopped hoping for adoption. She stopped calling anyone Mom or Dad. She kept her belongings in bags, ready to move at a moment's notice. The group homes came next, facilities where foster children who had been in the system too long were warehoused together. Jennifer learned to be invisible, to stay quiet, to not cause problems. She learned that showing emotion made you weak, that trusting people led to disappointment, that loving someone meant giving them the power to hurt you. On her 18th birthday, Jennifer aged out of the foster care system. She received a garbage bag with her belongings, $300 in state assistance, and a list of resources for transitional housing. No party, no family celebration. No one to tell her they were proud of how far she'd come or to promise they'd always be there for her. She was handed the keys to a tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, given a bus pass, and told she was on her own now. Most 18-year-olds are preparing for college with their parents' help, shopping for dorm room supplies, nervous about leaving home but knowing they have a home to return to during breaks. Jennifer was preparing to survive. The statistics for foster youth who age out of the system are devastating. Within 4 years, 70% will be on government assistance. 50% will be unemployed. 25% will experience homelessness. Less than 3% will earn a college degree. The system Jennifer had been in wasn't designed to prepare children for success. It was designed to warehouse them until they were no longer the state's responsibility. But Jennifer was determined to defy those statistics. She had always been good at school. It was the one thing she could control, the one place where her effort directly determined her outcome. She worked full-time at a grocery store while taking classes at community college. She slept 4 hours a night for 2 years. She lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. She cried herself to sleep on her birthdays and holidays, the loneliness of having no one to call crushing her chest until she couldn't breathe. But she didn't give up. She transferred to a 4-year university on a scholarship. She worked as a nursing assistant while getting her degree. She studied pediatric nursing because she understood what it felt like to be a scared child who needed someone to show them kindness, to see them, to treat them like they mattered. By the time she was 32, Jennifer had accomplished what seemed impossible. She had her nursing degree. She had a good job at Seattle Children's Hospital. She had stability and independence. She had survived, but she had done it all alone. What brought Jennifer to Family Feud was the community she had built around herself over the past few years. After a decade of isolation and self-sufficiency, Jennifer had finally started opening up to people. She had joined a support group for former foster youth, and there she had met others who understood her story. People who knew what it felt like to have no one show up to your high school graduation. People who understood the panic of filling out forms that asked for your parents' information. People who got why holidays were the hardest time of year. In this support group, Jennifer had met 5 people who would change her life. Marcus, who had aged out of foster care at 18 and was now a social worker. Keisha, who had been in 11 different placements and now ran a nonprofit for foster youth. David and his wife Lisa, who had both been adopted from foster care as teenagers and now fostered children themselves. And Father Miguel, a Catholic priest who ran the community center where the group met and who had been in foster care himself before being adopted by a family at age 15. These 5 people, along with others from the group, had become Jennifer's family, not by blood, not by law, but by choice. They celebrated birthdays together. They had holiday dinners together. They showed up for each other's victories and held each other through the hard days. They were the family Jennifer had spent her whole childhood waiting for. When a Family Feud casting call came through for Chosen Families Theme Week, Marcus had suggested they apply. "We're a real family," he said. "We chose each other. That counts." Jennifer had been hesitant. She didn't like talking about her past. She had spent most of her adult life trying to prove she was more than just a foster kid, more than a statistic, more than a sad story. But Marcus had persisted. "Maybe our story will help someone," he said. "Maybe some kid in foster care will see us and know that it's possible to build a good life, that they're not alone." So Jennifer had agreed. Their team called themselves Forever Family, a name that meant everything to people who had never had a family that lasted forever. They submitted their application with photos of their group gatherings, their holiday celebrations, their chosen family traditions. To their surprise, they were selected. As the taping day approached, Jennifer felt increasingly anxious. She knew Steve Harvey would ask about their family dynamic. She knew she'd have to explain that they weren't related by blood. And she knew that once she started telling her story, all the pain she'd worked so hard to bury might come flooding out. The night before the taping, she almost backed out. She called Marcus at midnight. "I can't do this," she said. "I can't stand up there and tell the world that nobody wanted me. I can't talk about being thrown away like garbage. I can't." "Jennifer," Marcus interrupted gently. "You weren't thrown away, you survived, and now you're thriving. That's the story, not the pain, but how you overcame it, not the rejection, but the family you built anyway." "But what if I break down?" Jennifer whispered. "What if I start crying on national television?" "Then you cry," Marcus said simply. "There's no shame in tears. There's only shame in pretending we're not human." So Jennifer got on the plane to Los Angeles. She wore her favorite blue dress, the one that made her feel confident and strong. She put on the necklace that Keisha had given her for her 30th birthday, a simple silver pendant with the word "Chosen" engraved on it. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had survived much harder things than a game show. What Jennifer didn't know was that her story was about to do exactly what Marcus had predicted. It was about to help someone. Actually, it was about to help thousands of someones, and it was about to change the way America thought about foster care, family, and what it means to belong. The Family Feud studio was buzzing with the usual pre-show energy. Forever Family stood on one side of the stage, facing their opponents, a traditional biological family called the Johnsons from Texas. The contrast was stark. The Johnsons were 3 generations, grandparents, parents, and adult children, all sharing the same last name, the same chin, the same easy familiarity of people who had known each other their entire lives. Forever Family was more diverse. Different races, different ages, different backgrounds. But when you looked closely, you could see the way they stood close to each other, the way Marcus kept a protective hand on Jennifer's shoulder, the way Keisha squeezed Jennifer's hand when she thought no one was looking. The love was just as real, even if it looked different. Steve Harvey was doing his pre-show warm-up with the audience, his signature humor filling the studio. But when he glanced at the Forever Family team, something in their energy caught his attention. There was a nervousness there, a vulnerability that was different from the usual game show jitters. As the cameras started rolling, Steve began his introductions. He started with the Johnson family, and they had the easy banter of people comfortable with who they were. The grandmother talked about her 10 grandchildren. The father joked about coaching Little League. They were America's picture-perfect family. Then Steve turned to Forever Family. "Now I gotta say, looking at you all, I'm seeing some diversity here. Y'all got different last names on these cards. What's the story? How are you all related?" There was a pause. The team members looked at each other and then at Jennifer. She was the team captain. This was her moment. Jennifer stepped forward, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "Steve, we're not related by blood. We're a chosen family. We all met through a support group for former foster youth." The studio got quieter. Steve's expression shifted from his usual playful demeanor to something more serious. "Former foster youth," he repeated. "So you all were in foster care." "Yes, sir," Marcus spoke up. All 6 of us aged out of the system. Between us, we've been in over 60 different placements. We know what it's like to not have a family, so we created one. Steve nodded slowly, processing this information. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And how long have you all been family? 5 years, Keisha answered. We started as a support group, but it became so much more. We're there for each other like families should be. Steve turned to Jennifer. And you're the team captain. Tell me about your journey. This was the moment Jennifer had been dreading. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, the audience, the cameras, the opposing family, her chosen family members. She could give a sanitized version, keep it simple, move on to the game. But she looked at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. She looked at Keisha, who mouthed, "You got this." She looked at Father Miguel, who made a small sign of the cross in her direction. And she decided to tell the truth. Steve, I entered foster care when I was 6 years old. My mother couldn't take care of me because of her addiction. I spent the next 12 years in 17 different foster homes and group homes. I was never adopted. On my 18th birthday, I aged out of the system and I was completely alone. No family, no support system, nowhere to go for Thanksgiving or Christmas, just me. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, but she continued. For a long time, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought maybe I was unlovable, that there was some defect in me that made families keep sending me back. I spent my whole childhood waiting for a family, and it never came. The studio was dead silent. Steve's eyes were already glistening with tears. The audience wasn't making a sound. Jennifer's voice grew stronger. But what I learned is that family isn't just about biology. It's not about who you're born to. It's about who shows up for you. Calls when you're having a bad day, who celebrates your victories, who holds you when you're falling apart. These people, she gestured to her team, they're my family. They chose me when nobody else did. Steve had to look away for a moment, wiping his eyes. When he turned back to Jennifer, his voice was thick with emotion. Wait a minute. Let me make sure I understand this. You're telling me that you spent 12 years in foster care, 17 different homes, and nobody adopted you, not one family. Jennifer shook her head, tears now streaming down her face. No, sir, I came close once. There was a family, and I lived with them for 14 months. I really thought they were going to keep me. I called them Mom and Dad. I started planning what I'd wear to their family reunion. And then they got pregnant, and they told the social worker they didn't have room for me anymore. Steve's hand went to his chest. They sent you back because they got pregnant? Yes, sir. I was 12 years old. Old enough to understand exactly what was happening. Old enough to know that their biological child was more important than me, that I was replaceable. The audience gasped. Several people were openly crying now. The Johnson family members looked stunned, many of them in tears as well. Steve looked genuinely angry. That's not right, that's not. How could they do that to a child? Jennifer wiped her eyes. It happens more than you'd think, Steve. Older kids in foster care were the ones who get left behind. Everyone wants babies. By the time you're 10 or 12, you're considered unadoptable. You're damaged goods. You've been through too much. You have too many problems. That's what I was told by caseworkers, by potential foster parents, by teachers. Too much baggage, too much trauma. But you're not damaged goods, Steve said firmly. You're a survivor. You're a fighter. Look at what you've accomplished. Jennifer gave a small, sad smile. It took me a long time to believe that, Steve. A really long time. Because when you spend your entire childhood being rejected by every adult who's supposed to take care of you, you start to believe there must be something wrong with you. She paused, gathering herself. When I aged out at 18, I got a garbage bag with my stuff, $300 and a bus pass. That was it. Happy birthday, you're an adult now, good luck. Most kids that age are getting ready for college with their parents helping them. I was trying to figure out how to survive on my own with no safety net, no one to call if I needed help, nobody who cared if I lived or died. The emotion in the room was overwhelming. Steve Harvey, who had been in show business for decades and had seen countless emotional moments, stood there with tears running down his face, unable to speak. Finally, he managed to say, Jennifer, I need to stop the game for a minute. I need everyone watching to understand what you just said. You were 18 years old, alone in the world, and nobody cared if you lived or died. Is that what you said? Jennifer nodded. That's how it felt, and statistics show that a lot of kids in my situation don't make it. They end up homeless, addicted, incarcerated, or dead. The system isn't designed to set us up for success. It's designed to warehouse us until we're 18 and then wash their hands of us. Marcus stepped forward. Steve, can I add something? All of us on this stage know exactly what Jennifer is talking about. I spent my 18th birthday sleeping in my car because the state assistance I got wasn't enough for rent. Keisha was homeless for 3 months after aging out. David here, he gestured to his teammate, was trafficked because he had nowhere to go and someone promised him food and a place to stay. Steve looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. This is happening in America. Kids aging out of our foster care system and ending up homeless and trafficked. Every single day, Father Miguel spoke up. Over 20,000 youth age out of foster care every year in this country, and most of them have no support, no family, no resources. The statistics are devastating. This is a crisis we're not talking about. Steve turned back to Jennifer. But you made it. You beat the odds. How? Jennifer took a deep breath. Honestly, I don't know if I would have made it without finding these people. For years, I did everything alone. I put myself through school working full-time. I became a pediatric nurse because I wanted to help kids like I used to be. But I was so lonely, Steve. I was so angry and hurt and lonely. I had built this successful life, but I had nobody to share it with. Her voice broke again. Do you know what it's like to graduate from nursing school and have nobody in the audience? To buy your first house and have nobody to show it to spend every single holiday alone because you have no one to invite you over. I had accomplished everything I was supposed to accomplish, but I was still that little girl nobody wanted. Keisha wrapped her arm around Jennifer, and Jennifer leaned into her. This simple gesture of comfort and love spoke volumes. But then I found this group, Jennifer continued, her voice stronger now. I found people who understood, who knew what it felt like to be thrown away, who got it when I said I couldn't call anyone mom or dad because those words had too much pain attached, who didn't judge me for keeping all my important documents in a go bag because some part of me still expected to have to leave at a moment's notice. She looked at her team members with pure love. These people gave me something I'd never had before. They gave me family. Not because they had to, not because a judge ordered it, not because they got a check from the state, because they wanted to, because they chose me, because they decided I was worth loving. Steve Harvey had to sit down on the podium platform. He couldn't stand anymore. The weight of what he was hearing was too much. I have 4 children, Steve said, his voice shaking. I cannot imagine. I cannot fathom any of them going through what you went through. The thought of my child aging out of foster care with nowhere to go, nobody to call, sleeping in a car or on the streets. He couldn't finish the sentence. Jennifer knelt down next to where Steve was sitting. Steve, there are kids going through it right now. As we're standing here, there are teenagers in foster care who are terrified because they're about to turn 18 and they have nowhere to go. There are 6-year-olds entering the system right now who will spend the next 12 years being moved from home to home, never feeling safe, never feeling wanted. She looked directly at the camera. And there are adults out there, good people with resources and love to give, who could change a child's life by becoming a foster parent or adopting an older child. But they don't because they think it's too hard, or they want a baby, or they believe the lies about older kids being too damaged. Her voice grew passionate. I wasn't too damaged. I was hurt and scared and traumatized, yes, but I wasn't broken beyond repair. I just needed someone to be patient with me, to show up consistently, to prove that they weren't going to give up on me when things got hard. That's all any of these kids need: consistency, patience, unconditional love. Steve stood up and pulled Jennifer into a hug. You are one of the bravest people I have ever met, he said into her hair. And I want you to know something. What happened to you is not your fault. You were not unlovable. You were not damaged. The system failed you. Those families failed you. But you, Jennifer Torres, you did not fail. You survived. You thrived. And now you're using your story to help others. The audience erupted into applause. It wasn't the polite game show applause. It was the kind of applause that comes from the soul, the kind that says, we see you, we hear you, your pain matters, your triumph matters. But Steve wasn't done. Steve Harvey stepped back from Jennifer and addressed the cameras directly, his face serious in a way the Family Feud audience had rarely seen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop this game. I know we're supposed to play Family Feud right now, but I don't care about the game. This is more important than any game show. What we're talking about right now is more important than points or prizes or any of that. He turned to the producers. Get me a chair. We're going to sit and talk for as long as we need to. Someone brought chairs onto the stage, and Steve gestured for Forever Family to sit. The Johnson family, the opposing team, stood there not quite knowing what to do. Johnson family, Steve addressed them. I hope you don't mind, but I need to have this conversation. Is that okay with you? The Johnson patriarch, a man in his 60s, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. Steve, we don't mind at all. We're honored to be here for this. What Jennifer and her family are sharing, everyone needs to hear this. His wife added, we have 3 grandchildren we adopted from foster care 5 years ago. Older kids, 8, 10, and 12 at the time. Best decision we ever made, but so many people told us not to do it, said older kids were too much trouble. We're so grateful we didn't listen. Jennifer's head snapped up. You adopted older kids from foster care? Mrs. Johnson nodded, crying now. Yes, honey. And hearing your story? That could have been any one of our babies. They were in the system for years before we found them. They have so much trauma, so much pain. But they're our grandchildren, and we love them like we love all our biological grandchildren. Jennifer stood and hugged this woman she'd just met, and both of them sobbed. The image of these 2 families, one biological, one chosen, both united in understanding the importance of giving children homes, was powerful beyond words. Steve let the moment happen, then gently brought everyone back. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Jennifer, I want you to tell everyone watching what people can do to help. How can we fix this system that failed you? Jennifer wiped her eyes and took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. This was her chance to advocate for the children still in the system, the ones who were where she used to be. First, if you have the capacity to foster or adopt, please consider older children. Everyone wants babies and toddlers, and I understand why. But there are teenagers in the system who have been waiting their entire lives for a family. They need you just as much, maybe more. They're not too damaged. They're just hurting and need someone to be patient with them. Steve nodded. What else? Support organizations that help foster youth, especially those that focus on youth aging out of the system. There are amazing nonprofits providing housing, education support, job training, and mentorship to youth who have no family. They're literally saving lives. Marcus jumped in. And if you can't foster or adopt, become a mentor. Big brothers, big sisters, CASA, court-appointed special advocates. There are so many ways to be a consistent adult presence in a foster child's life. That consistency matters more than you know. Father Miguel added, and advocate for policy changes. The age-out process is inhumane. In some states, kids are literally put out on the street the day they turn 18, regardless of whether they have housing or support. Some states have extended care to 21, which helps, but we need to do more. Keisha spoke up. And please stop asking foster children inappropriate questions. Don't ask them why their parents gave them up. Don't ask them why nobody adopted them. Don't make them tell their trauma story to satisfy your curiosity. Treat them with dignity. Steve was taking mental notes of everything they were saying. This is important, this is really important, and I want to do something about it. He stood up, pacing for a moment as he thought. Then he turned back to the Forever Family team. Jennifer, you said you spent your nursing school graduation alone, nobody in the audience. Jennifer nodded. Yes, sir. Where did you go to school? University of Washington. Steve pulled out his phone right there on stage. What's the date of the next graduation for the nursing program? Jennifer looked confused. I think it's in June, but Steve, why? Because I'm going to be there, Steve said firmly. Any former foster youth graduating from that nursing program, I'm going to be there in the audience. They're not going to be alone, not anymore. Jennifer's hands flew to her mouth. The audience erupted in applause, but Steve wasn't finished. And Family Feud is making a donation of $100,000 to an organization that supports youth aging out of foster care. Forever Family, you all help pick which organization. Make sure it's one that's actually making a difference. More applause, but Steve held up his hand. I'm still not done. Forever Family, I want you to know that you won today's game. I don't care what the Johnson family says, you won. You're taking home the money. Both families are taking home the money, actually, because the Johnsons clearly understand what family means too. He turned to the Johnsons. You said you adopted older kids from foster care. You get the money too, $20,000 to each family. The studio was going crazy. People were standing, cheering, crying. Steve continued. But more than that, I want to use my platform to change the conversation about foster care in this country. We're going to do a special episode about this. We're going to bring on families who have adopted older kids. We're going to bring on youth who have aged out successfully. We're going to show America that these kids are worth it, that they deserve families, that they're not broken. Jennifer was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Her chosen family surrounded her, all of them holding each other. And Jennifer, Steve said gently, I want you to know something. You said nobody wanted you. You said you felt like you were unlovable, like there was something wrong with you. But look at this audience. Look at the people watching at home. You are loved. You are valued. You matter. The system failed you. Those families failed you, but you didn't fail. You survived and you thrived, and now you're standing here being a voice for kids who can't speak for themselves. He paused. And I want to tell you something else. As of today, you have family beyond this team here. My wife and I were adopting you. Not legally, you're a grown woman, but in our hearts, you're family now. You have somewhere to go for Thanksgiving. You have somewhere to go for Christmas. You have someone to call when you're having a bad day. You have someone in the audience at your life events. Do you understand me? Jennifer could only nod, completely overcome with emotion. Steve looked at the rest of the Forever Family team. All of you, every one of you, you're family now. My wife is going to kill me for inviting people to Thanksgiving without asking her first, but she'll understand when I tell her your story. You're not alone anymore, none of you. The camera operators were crying, the producers were crying, the audience was in complete hysterics. Even the Johnson family was sobbing. Mrs. Johnson spoke up through her tears. Steve, we'd like to add something. Our family, our biological children, our adopted grandchildren, all of us, we want to host a Christmas dinner for foster youth in our community. We have a big ranch in Texas. We can fit 50, 60 kids easy. Kids who might otherwise spend Christmas alone, they'll have a family Christmas with us." Her husband added, "And we'll do it every year. We'll make it a tradition. No kid should spend Christmas alone." The outpouring of love and commitment was overwhelming. Steve Harvey looked at the cameras, at the millions of people watching, and made one final appeal. If you're watching this at home and you've been thinking about fostering or adopting, let this be your sign. There's a child waiting for you. An older child, a teenager, a kid who's been told they're unadoptable, who's been sent back too many times, who's given up hope. That child needs you. And I promise you, if you open your heart and your home to them, they will change your life in ways you can't imagine. He turned back to Jennifer. Tell them what you would say to a family considering adopting an older child from foster care." Jennifer stood, composed herself, and looked directly at the camera. Her voice was steady and strong. "I would tell them that it won't be easy. That child will test you. They'll push you away because they're waiting for you to give up on them like everyone else has. They'll have trauma responses that seem irrational. They'll struggle to trust. They'll keep their belongings in bags for months, maybe years, because they don't believe this is permanent. They'll flinch when you raise your voice. They'll hoard food. They'll lie about little things because honesty hasn't been safe before." She paused. "But I would also tell them that underneath all that pain is a child who desperately wants to be loved, who wants to belong, who wants to matter to someone. And if you can be consistent, if you can show up day after day and prove that you're not going anywhere, that child will bloom in ways that will take your breath away." Her voice softened. "I would tell them that the first time that child calls you mom or dad, you'll understand that every difficult moment was worth it. The first time they come to you when they're hurt instead of hiding, you'll know you've broken through. The first time they leave their belongings unpacked because they finally believe this is home, you'll cry tears of joy." She smiled through her tears. "And I would tell them that you're not just changing that child's life, you're changing the trajectory of every generation that comes after them, because that child will grow up knowing what family means and they'll create healthy families of their own. You're breaking a cycle of trauma and abandonment. You're creating a legacy of love." The studio erupted in applause once again, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like a commitment, like everyone in that room and everyone watching at home was being called to action. Steve Harvey wrapped his arms around Jennifer one more time. "You're going to save lives with your story," he whispered. "So many lives." When the episode aired 3 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The clip of Jennifer's revelation went viral within hours, garnering over 800 million views in the first week alone. But more importantly, it sparked a movement. Within 48 hours of the episode airing, the National Foster Care Hotline received over 100,000 calls from people inquiring about becoming foster parents, with 73% specifically asking about fostering or adopting older children. Adoption agencies reported a 300% increase in applications for teenagers in the foster care system. The organization that Forever Family chose to receive the $100,000 donation, Together We Rise, a nonprofit supporting foster youth, reported that they received an additional $4 million in donations within the first month after the episode aired. Other foster care organizations saw similar increases, but the numbers, as impressive as they were, only told part of the story. 2 weeks after the episode aired, Jennifer received a letter. It was from a woman named Susan in Ohio. "Dear Jennifer," the letter read, "I watched your Family Feud episode and I cried for 3 hours. You see, 30 years ago, I was a foster mother. I had a 12-year-old girl in my care for 14 months. She called me Mom. She was part of our family, but then I got pregnant and my husband and I made the decision to send her back because we were worried we couldn't handle both a new baby and a traumatized preteen. I have thought about that girl every single day for 30 years. I have wondered if she was okay. I have hated myself for what I did to her. When you told your story, I saw her. I saw what we did to her. I contacted the agency to try to find her, to apologize, to tell her that sending her back was the worst mistake of my life. But they told me she died of a drug overdose when she was 23. She's gone, and I never got to tell her I was sorry. I never got to tell her that she wasn't the problem. We were. Jennifer, I'm writing to tell you that I'm fostering again. I have a 15-year-old boy in my home who has been in care for 8 years. And this time, I'm not giving up. This time, I'm going to be the parent he deserves. I'm doing it in memory of the girl I failed and in honor of your bravery in sharing your story. Thank you for giving me the courage to try again and to do it right this time." Jennifer read the letter and sobbed. She kept it in a folder that quickly filled with hundreds of similar letters, from former foster parents who regretted giving up, from adoptive parents who wanted her to know they were fighting for their kids, from foster youth who said her story made them feel less alone. But the most powerful letters came from teenagers currently in foster care. Dear Jennifer, I'm 16 and I've been in care since I was 7. I've been in 13 different homes. I stopped believing anyone would ever want me. But after I saw your episode, I realized something. Even if I age out without being adopted, I can still make it like you did. I can still build a good life. You gave me hope when I had none left. Thank you. Dear Jennifer, I'm 14 and my foster family just told me they're sending me back because I'm too much to handle. I wanted to give up. I wanted to run away and just be done with everything. But then I watched your story and I realized that being sent back doesn't mean I'm worthless. It means they failed, not me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to survive like you did. Jennifer started responding to every letter. She would stay up late at night, writing personal responses to teenagers in foster care across the country, telling them they mattered, that they were worth fighting for, that their stories didn't have to end in tragedy. Steve Harvey kept his promise too. In June, he flew to Seattle for the University of Washington nursing school graduation. He sat in the audience wearing a shirt that said, "I'm here for the foster care survivors," and he cheered loudly for every graduate. 3 former foster youth graduated from the program that year, and all 3 had Steve Harvey and Jennifer and the entire Forever Family team in the audience supporting them. But Steve didn't stop there. He created a foundation called Nobody's Orphan, dedicated to supporting youth aging out of foster care. The foundation provided scholarships, housing assistance, mentorship programs, and emergency funds for young adults who had no family support. In the foundation's first year, it supported over 5,000 youth aging out of care. By year 3, that number had grown to 15,000. The special Family Feud episode about foster care aired 6 months after Jennifer's original appearance. It featured 3 families who had adopted older children from foster care, along with the children themselves sharing their stories. It featured young adults who had aged out successfully and were building good lives. And it featured Jennifer and Forever Family doing a follow-up. During that follow-up episode, Steve revealed something Jennifer didn't know. A family in Seattle had seen her original appearance and had been moved to action. They had specifically requested to adopt a teenage girl in foster care, and they had asked the agency if Jennifer would be willing to mentor her. Steve brought the family and the girl, a 15-year-old named Maria who had been in care for 9 years, onto the show. Jennifer met Maria for the first time on that stage, and the connection was immediate. "I saw your story," Maria told Jennifer through tears, "and I thought if she made it, maybe I can too. And now I have a family that's not giving up on me. They chose me, the girl that everyone said was too angry, too traumatized, too broken. They chose me anyway." Jennifer hugged this girl she'd never met and whispered, "You were never too broken. You were just waiting for the right people. And now you found them." The cameras captured this moment. 2 foster care survivors, one who had made it through and one who was just beginning her journey, connecting across their shared trauma and shared hope. It became one of the most powerful images of the entire foster care initiative. 1 year after Jennifer's original appearance, Steve Harvey hosted a special event at his family's home in Atlanta. He had invited every member of Forever Family, along with dozens of other former foster youth from across the country. It was the first annual Chosen Family Thanksgiving. Over 100 people attended, former foster youth, adoptive families, current foster parents, and advocates. They had a traditional Thanksgiving dinner, but the most important part was what happened after the meal. One by one, people stood up and shared their stories. They talked about being in foster care, about aging out, about the trauma and the triumph. But they also talked about the family they had found or built, about the people who had chosen them, about how they were breaking cycles and creating new legacies. Jennifer stood to share last. "A year ago, I stood on a Family Feud stage and told my story for the first time publicly. I was terrified. I thought people would see me as damaged, as broken, as a sad story. But instead, something beautiful happened. People saw me as a survivor, as strong, as someone who had overcome impossible odds." She looked around the room. "But more than that, telling my story created a ripple effect I never could have imagined. Thousands of children have been adopted or fostered because people heard my story and decided to act. Millions of dollars have been raised to support foster youth. Laws have been changed in several states to provide better support for kids aging out. Lives have been saved." Her voice grew stronger. "But the most important thing is that the conversation has changed. We're not calling foster children damaged anymore. We're not saying older kids are unadoptable. We're recognizing that these children are valuable, worthy, deserving of love and family. We're recognizing that the system needs to change, not the children." She looked directly at Steve Harvey, who was crying again. "And Steve, you started this. You could have just played the game that day. You could have acknowledged my story and moved on, but you didn't. You stopped everything. You made it matter. You used your platform to amplify voices that usually go unheard. Thank you. Steve stood and hugged Jennifer. No, thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to share your pain. Thank you for turning your trauma into triumph. Thank you for using your story to help others. You're changing the world, Jennifer. You're changing the whole world. 3 years after the original Family Feud episode, Jennifer's life looked very different. She was still a pediatric nurse, but she had also become a national advocate for foster care reform. She testified before Congress about the need for better support for youth aging out of the system. She wrote a book called Chosen, Finding Family After Foster Care, that became a bestseller. She traveled the country speaking at conferences, training foster parents, mentoring foster youth. But the most important change was this: Jennifer was no longer alone. She had forever family, of course, but she also had the extended family that had grown from that original group. She had Steve and Marjorie Harvey, who truly had adopted her into their family and invited her to every holiday. She had the Johnson family from that original Family Feud episode, who had become dear friends. She had hundreds of foster care survivors across the country who she had connected with, creating a national network of chosen family. And she had Maria, the teenager she had met on the follow-up episode. Jennifer had become Maria's mentor, and then her big sister figure, and eventually Maria had asked Jennifer to legally adopt her as an adult adoption. Jennifer had said yes, and at age 18, Maria had legally become Jennifer's sister. I spent my whole childhood wanting a family, Jennifer told a reporter interviewing her for the 3-year anniversary of her Family Feud appearance. And now I have multiple families. I have more family than I know what to do with. And every single one of them chose me. Nobody chose me when I was a kid, but as an adult, I've been chosen over and over and over again. The reporter asked, if you could go back and talk to 6-year-old Jennifer entering foster care for the first time, what would you tell her? Jennifer thought for a long moment. I would tell her that it's going to be hard, really, really hard. I would tell her that she's going to be hurt and disappointed and rejected more times than she can count. I would tell her that there will be nights when she's so lonely she thinks she might die from it. That there will be holidays she spends alone, milestones with nobody in the audience, birthdays with nobody to call. She paused. But I would also tell her that she's going to survive it, that she's stronger than she knows, that the rejection doesn't define her, how she responds to it does. And I would tell her that one day, when she least expects it, family will find her. Not the family she was born to or the family that was court-ordered, but the family that chooses her, again and again and again. And that family will be worth every tear, every lonely night, every moment of pain. Her eyes filled with tears. And I would tell her that her story matters, that her pain has purpose. That one day she'll stand on a stage and share her truth, and it will help thousands of other children who feel just as alone as she does. I would tell her to hold on because her story doesn't end in tragedy. It ends in triumph, in family, in love. 5 years after the original episode, Family Feud did another anniversary special. Jennifer appeared with Forever Family, but this time there were additions to the team. Maria was there, now 20 years old and in college studying social work. 3 other former foster youth who had been mentored by Jennifer and adopted by Forever Family members were there too. The chosen family had grown, but the most powerful moment came when Steve revealed a video montage of families across America who had been inspired by Jennifer's story to foster or adopt. One by one, families appeared on screen with the children they had welcomed into their homes. We saw Jennifer's story and knew we had to do something. This is Marcus. He'd been in care for 10 years. He's our son now, and we can't imagine life without him. Jennifer's bravery gave us the courage to adopt our daughter Shanice. She was 14 and had been told she was too old to be adopted. We proved them wrong. She's 17 now and thriving. We fostered 3 siblings because of Jennifer's episode. They're our forever family now. The montage went on for 15 minutes. Dozens of families, over 100 children who had been adopted or fostered directly because of Jennifer's willingness to share her story. When the montage ended, the entire studio was in tears. Jennifer sat there in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. Steve turned to her. Jennifer, do you understand what you've done? Over 100 children have permanent families because you were brave enough to share your pain. Hundreds more have been supported through the programs and funding that came from your story. You've literally changed the trajectory of thousands of lives. Jennifer couldn't speak. She could only cry as her chosen family surrounded her, holding her up the way they always had. But she did manage to say one thing. This is what happens when we choose love, when we choose family, when we choose to show up for each other even when it's hard. This is what happens when nobody is left behind. The camera pulled back on this image. a grown woman who had been rejected her entire childhood, now surrounded by more love than she had ever imagined possible. A woman who had been told she was unlovable, now being celebrated for inspiring love in thousands of hearts. A woman who had aged out of foster care alone, now at the center of a family, multiple families, who would never let her be alone again. As the episode ended, text appeared on screen. Since Jennifer Torres shared her story on Family Feud in September 2024, over 12,000 older children and teenagers have been adopted from foster care in the United States, a 400% increase from previous years. The Nobody's Orphan Foundation has supported over 50,000 youth aging out of care. Legislation has been passed in 15 states improving support for transitioning foster youth. And most importantly, the conversation about foster care has fundamentally changed. As Jennifer says, these children aren't broken, they're just waiting for someone to choose them. Choose to make a difference. Visit www.togetherwerise.org or www.nobodysorphan.org to learn how you can help. Jennifer Torres' story became more than a viral moment. It became a movement that transformed the American foster care system and gave hope to hundreds of thousands of children who had been told they were unlovable, unadoptable, unwanted. She had been chosen, and in being chosen, she had helped others be chosen too. Some families are born, some families are made, but the most powerful families are the ones that choose each other again and again through every hard moment and every triumph. That's the legacy of Jennifer Torres and Forever Family. That's the power of one person having the courage to share their truth. That's what happens when a game show host decides that some stories are more important than games. And that's the proof that no child is ever truly orphaned, as long as there are people willing to choose them, to love them, to tell them, you matter, you belong, you are family.